have good linkages, I accept. But she said, you know, you are the first journalist I give an interview because we didn't even get a vote of confidence. Now, I don't think this was because of me or because of my the link I have used. It was also indicative of the willingness on the, you know, part of the Greek tourism minister to address the Turkish audience. So I thought it was an important thing that she, you know, accepted to give an interview first to a Turkish journalist and after to Greek journalists, even before there was a vote of confidence in the government. That's one. The second thing is, you know, when we say not much is being done, again, on the tourism, I understand that on Turkey, the Turkish side is trying to restore some of the, you know, Greek churches, and on the Greek side, despite the dire circumstances, there is an effort, my understanding, to sort of make the restoration of certain mosques, especially in the tourism areas. And again, I mean, there is this flock of Turkish tourists to Greece, and I, you know, when you remember in 15 years ago, you know, I mean, you couldn't even, I mean, when I would be, you know, very positive about Turkish-Greek relations, Turkish diplomats used to tell me, God, you journalists, you're so, you know, optimist, you know, you don't know the realities, you know, you go to Greece and you cannot even have a Turkish flag. Normally, you know, in hotels, when there's a Turkish visitor, let's say, you're supposed to have a flag. You can't even have a flag in Greece, etc. They're too nationalistic, etc. Now you go to the islands, you know, and you have, you know, these plates in Turkish saying you can find Turkish breakfast here. People, no, even that they have become even flexible, you know, and you know, to me that was unimaginable. People speaking in Turkish, etc., etc. So I think, and again, as a journalist, you know, one of the areas which I get a lot of complaint, it's the visas. You know, Turks are complaining tremendously about visas, and I couldn't imagine that my answer would be, go to the Greeks. They give it very easily, you know, and ironic that the French as well nowadays are quite good too. But, you know, I wouldn't imagine myself saying, you know, go to the Greeks, prefer the Greeks, you know, to get a visa. So that's why I was sort of thinking that maybe this time the people are ahead, perhaps, of the elites. But another and final point that I'd like to make again on my trip to Athens, I've realized something, that we here in Turkey, I'm not sure to what degree we were aware of the acuteness and the deepness of the economic crisis, honestly. I felt it when I went there. I mean, you know, reading and hearing is something, but, you know, going and seeing it is another thing. So when we're talking about the fact that the governments perhaps are not doing much, perhaps we have to give a bit of credit to the fact that, you know, the Greek governments, you know, are sort of dealing with a huge fire. And this, fire, you know, in the sense that it's such a deep economic crisis, internal issues, that perhaps it's only natural that they perhaps might not have the energy, etc., to perhaps to deal with the Turkish issue as much as we might think. Having said that, let me, you know, I would welcome anyone to obviously, you know, answer back if you have any thoughts on me. But before, let me have a question from there, please, and a question from there. Bir gidelim şimdilik. Let's go one and one, unless it will be a follow-up. Okay? Buyurun. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Maria. Okay, there is here. Right? It's working? Huh? Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Maria Varaki. For those who are not from Kadir Has University, I'm also Greek, and I'm teaching international law here at the law faculty. And I'm together with Dimitris and Kostas. I'm the other example proof, you know, of the rapprochement together with another academic from Greece sitting next to me. Actually, I have a comment and a question. The comment is I very much agree with your last comment about tourism, because I come from northern Greece. I'm from Kavala. So I live between Kavala and Selanik, and I can tell you the last years, every single weekend, it's impossible to park in Selanik or in Kavala. You cannot find a parking spot because every car table is 34. It's 34, which is fantastic. Common people are grateful to Turkish people for coming because they managed to revive the economy, at least of northern Greece. So I don't know who is the elite. That was my question to Dimitris during the coffee break, how you define the elite. And generally, the elite is very conservative. We are outsiders, we are outsiders. And generally, what is called elite is conservative, and they take the official position. But I totally agree with your comment that common people are far ahead of that, Call it practical purposes, economic, the financial crisis, the refugee feeling, of people coming from Turkey and they're looking for the places of the great grandfathers, in Greece there is something which is fantastic and very different. My question is addressed to the whole panel. The ambassador before talked about the forthcoming elections here in Turkey, and we had elections, as all of you know, in Greece. And foreign policy was totally missing from the campaign. And the next day, after the establishment of the new cabinet, we woke up and we were shocked, at least the majority, at least some of us who are in this room, because we ended up with an extra nationalist minister of defense to the extent of psychiatric help, Kamenos, and also with an extremely infamous minister of foreign affairs, infamous about his writings with regard to communist Poland. And yesterday, this minister invited in the first Council of Foreign Affairs Golden Dawn to participate and to be, in these meetings in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So my question is, to all the panel about this extreme nationalism that comes from the new cabinet increase, and nationalism that also is very much relevant in the Turkey. To what extent you see that we can have a problem? To what extent that is going to affect further relations? Thank you.
Sorry. Okay, let's have 3 minutes of answers and go on with the rest of the questions.
Very quickly, because the tourism question keeps coming up, and I keep thinking, Greece is also a popular destination for German tourists and others, and if you ask German public opinion what they think of Greece right now, the very tourists that have gone to Greece, I think it's very low. So I am not sure. This is one indicator, the people-to-people contacts, but I don't think it's enough. Obviously, what joins us is the neighborhood, but it's good that feeling is there, but it could change overnight. This is just my first comment, both listening to you and Maria's comment, So the nationalism, I think it's something that also Ambassador Vulcan raised. It's there. It's rare because, our histories are so tied in that what we consider a catastrophe is considered a victory by Turkey and vice versa, at different times throughout history. And we have not really managed to overcome that. And I think nationalism, populism are something where I would rather have here the elites. Mustafa before also talked about the fact that he thinks the public is ahead of the elites. But in this case, based on at least on our survey results, I would rather have these elites be in charge of the process than public opinion at this stage, which I think is more malleable to nationalism, more malleable to populism because of the crisis. I could be wrong, but this is my gut reaction. I think, Kostas, you might want also to answer the question about how we pick the elites. Yeah, maybe.
But we tried to focus on leading members of the elite. For example, military elites from the colonel and lieutenant general upwards, and directors of specific directorates. Same thing with the foreign ministry. So it's as I said, leading members of the elite. Yes, you can see the methodology if you have time and you are not bored with these things, academic methodologies. You can look at it in the relevant site.
Two things. About the first, I share with Dimitris kind of a healthy skepticism about people-to-people connection. A few years back, quite a few years back, with a friend of mine, we wrote an article about Turkey's relations with Syria, Iraq, and Iran in the Middle East, and we called the relations patrimonial. And we argued that even though people-to-people relations were developing at the time, it's the state who decides how much it develops or not. I fear the same thing between Greece and Turkey. We are talking here tourists who are coming here or going there, but they are allowed to do so by the governments with their relaxed visa regimes. I don't see people taking up streets if the government suddenly decides to revoke the visa regimes. You know, if suddenly Turkey decides to put visa on Greek citizens, I don't see Turkish citizens taking the streets against Turkish governments, like, oh no, don't do it. And the same in Greece. So this is happening because of the governments wants this to happen. And in this country and in Greece, the governments are very important, still are very important, unfortunately. And that's why I'm all for people-to-people connection, but that's why I'm saying that we have to tend to it. We have to continuously support it. As Dimitri said in his previous remarks, he gave an example of France and Germany still doing, after all these years, they're still doing projects and supporting and etc. During the break, I talked to a few people. Turkey, every year, there is a project in Turkey. We gave, Turkey's government gives scholarships to thousands of people around the world, so-called Turkic and friendly nations. Why not Greece being a friendly nation? We can, let's imagine Turkish government giving 1,000 scholarship every year to Greek university students to come and study in Turkey, and same from the Greek government. In 5 years' time, you have 10,000 persons, right? Spending time, quality time, not as a tourist a week. You go there, you eat, you drink, it's nice, and come back. It doesn't change your perceptions too much. But 10,000 people in 5 years, having spent more than a year in the opposite country, and think about their families. So it's 50,000 people. It's important. So these are small projects, actually, could be implemented, but the governments should do it. And they're not doing it. That's my criticism. Second point, something came to my mind. When Turkish-Greek rapprochement started, out of a crisis of Öcalan affair, actually, it started because Turkey at the time, or the foreign minister most probably at the time, chose not to exploit the situation against Greece. And a few days ago, a Greek told me also similar thing. He said, now Turkey is not exploiting the fact that Greece is weak, on his knees, that was his words actually, economically. So I think this is also important aspect. By not doing something, sometimes you are doing lots of things. And I think that's, I wanted to get that out here also. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Actually, I was once visiting NATO headquarters, and the Turkish diplomat who was escorting me, he just talked in Turkish to a group of diplomats, and I said, who are they? He said, they're Albanians. I said, how come they speak Turkish? He said, well, they're the F-type, And I was, F-type meaning these were Albanians raised in Fethullah Gülen schools, and they have come to such a stage that they have become diplomats for the Albania's NATO delegation. I was very surprised and impressed, actually, and that was the time when, you know, you could still have positive talk about the schools. But anyway, just in 3 minutes, Sylvia, any reflection on perhaps Cyprus elites versus public opinion in 3 minutes only, if you can?
I guess there will be some other questions about Cyprus. We were talking about the property and also about the education. But what I was thinking about was that my remarks about the education in context of what Maria and Dimitri said might have looked a bit naive. Of course, I know that you know, the curricula and the changes in syllabuses have been tried in both respective countries, and it did not work in Cyprus, in my view, because it was done unilaterally only by Turkish Cypriots, not by Greek Cypriots. That's why I think that it should be done. It should be done always bilaterally. But at the same time, I don't think we should give up. I don't say that it's an easy project or it's an easy thing to do, but I can't imagine doing without that, you know. Even a small step in this direction is, I mean, I'm biased. Of course, I'm biased by my profession. I believe in education, and the trust, what you mentioned, the issue of trust, is not based on empirical. It's not empirical, right? Because I talked to, for instance, a friend of mine. She's running a hotel in just across the borders, and she told me that actually the most trustable tourists she's getting or she's having are Turks. So that percentage of trust, what you get, the low percentage, is not based on empirical evidence. It's obviously something what has been taught and learned, right? So I mean, if we don't try to change it, I think that we are at the loss, and then the whole rapprochement is going to stay as an elitist project. And yeah, basically, yeah, that's it.
Madam Chair, my name is Serhat Güvenç. I teach international relations here. I used to earn half of my bread by teaching or talking about Turkish-Greek problems, and the other half used to come from, you know, teaching about the European integration. Now, I mean, I'm teaching on other subjects. It was very popular back then. So, and my classes were always popular, both, you know, European integration and Turkish-Greek disputes classes were always popular. These days, unfortunately, I have difficulty, you know, recruiting students. And that brings me to an interesting conclusion that the mindset among the young generation is totally different today. I mean, the university students, you know, just think of this particular campus. I mean, we have students, IR majors, whose department chair is a Greek of Greece, not a Rum of Istanbul. That is the difference. So they have been socializing with them. They are learning to solve their daily problems with the help of a Greek professor. Therefore, it will be very difficult to convince this young generation to fall back on the old position. Yes, Professor Aydin is right. The government holds the key, but the stakes are higher compared to 10 years ago, you know, when they decide, you know, to rupture the relations overnight. I mean, the consequences would be felt on the government, and this was not possible. That was not possible 10 years ago. Also, I'm an academic, and I'm also an NGO administrator. I am the board member of Lozan Mübadilleri Vakfı, Lausanne Treaty Immigrants Foundation, and you know, we used to depend EU funding for survival. EU stopped funding our projects because Turkish-Greek rapprochement at social level is a done deal for the EU. Believe it or not, I mean, they are reluctant to underwrite anything that is about, you know, building social bridges between the two people. And a personal experience, I mean, and you know, some of the people sitting on this panel were instrumental in that. Last year I attended a seminar organized by Greek General Staff, right, or was Ministry of Defense. And you know, I was involved all sorts of activities, academic and track 2 activities, but never even in my wildest dreams that, you know, I would be greeted at the airport by a Greek army aviator lieutenant. And I was given a ride in an official Greek Air Force car to the venue of the conference. So, I mean, such things were impossible. And I'm an optimist. I'm a pessimist, and I'm a political realist like Kostas. And a pessimist is an optimist realist, you know, to quote another Greek colleague of ours, you know, Harry Dimitras, indeed, I mean. So I see reasons to remain optimistic, but the problem is lack of institutionalization. You know, is the relationship on a sustainable track is a different issue. But definitely, especially in terms of generations, I mean, we're dealing with a new generation, and they are not used to, you know, hearing or talking about Turkish-Greek problems. Even dogfights over the Aegean are no longer interesting. You know, they're not no longer interesting. Well, Syria offers more interesting stories in that respect. Thank you.
I wanted to. The confidence building measure probably doesn't make sense right now, but I think it's interesting to think about why it's always come up. And the reason that Greek Cypriots have been so insistent on Varosho is because they haven't been able to see anything else forthcoming. So I think now that Akıncı is presenting a very different spirit and is fully committed to carrying the talks to their conclusion very quickly, at least in his statements, I think that that itself has given the Greek Cypriots a bit more confidence that probably that main track can continue. So I agree that focusing on the key issues within the settlement talks itself is probably to be prioritized right now. But one thing that Turkey can do very quickly, because it will be a sticking point, is on property. Because the compensation regime and plus the territorial adjustments plus the right to return are all going to be bundled up in this. And since there is a mechanism already existing in Cyprus established